So Politico broke this massive story here, and I think the headline says it all. I don't know how many of these things I'm actually willing to say. But the headline does read, "Leaked messages expose young Republicans' racist chat. Thousands of private messages reveal young GOP leaders joking about gas chambers, slavery, and assault." And you can see the assortment of colorful comments, let's say, here in this. I think they probably had a fancy animation for this, didn't they? Yeah, because they were real excited about this story. Okay. But yeah, we can see a whole lot of messages here. So let's read the article and let's see what was actually uncovered. I actually haven't read this article yet. I've heard people talking about this. But I haven't actually read the article yet. So I'm actually quite curious to see what's in this. But let's see. It reads as follows. Leaders of young Republican groups throughout the country worried what would happen if the Telegram chat ever got leaked, but they kept typing anyway. They referred to black people as monkeys and the watermelon people, and mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about assaulting their enemies and driving them to suicide, and lauded Republicans who supported slavery. William Hendricks, the Kansas Young Republicans vice chair, I'm not familiar with this person, but then again, I also don't live in Kansas. Well, that Kansas exists, not anymore. Used variations of the N-word more than a dozen times in the chat. Bobby Walker, the vice chair of the New York State Young Republicans at the time, referred to assault as epic. Peter Giunta, who at the time was chair of the same organization, wrote in a message sent in June that, quote, "Everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber." Wait, hold on. So are these chats all from the Kansas Young Republicans group chat? Like, is this just for Kansas? Because interestingly enough, the way that I've sort of heard the story pitched is that, like, the Republicans have a racism problem, because look at this. And so I assumed that it was sort of like a group chat that included leaders from various conservative organizations across the country. If these are all people from Kansas, like if these are just a bunch of racist Kansans in a Telegram chat, then that's a little bit different. But we'll read on, right? I haven't read this article, so we can reserve judgment until we finish the article. I'm just thinking out loud, as one does on a venue and platform like this. Let's see here. Giunta was referring to an upcoming vote on whether he should become chair of the Young Republican National Federation. Okay, yeah. So Young Republican. This is kind of more along the lines of what I heard. It's kind of a group of young conservative leaders all across the country. Giunta was referring to an upcoming vote on whether he should become chair of the Young Republican National Federation, the GOP's 15,000 member political organization for Republicans between 18 and 40 years old. Well, actually, I don't know. He's talking about it. I don't know if that means that the chat is for members of the group. "I'm going to create some of the greatest psychological torture methods known to man. We only want true believers," he continued. 2 members of the chat responded. I don't know. There's PG, BW. I don't know who these people are. Okay, hold on. Wait. It lists the people. So PG is Peter Giunta. BW is Bobby Walker. Ann K. Katie is AK. Joe Maligno is JM. Rachel Hope is RH, and Alex Dwyer is AD. Okay, so it says here. So we got PG saying everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber, and everyone that endorsed but then votes for us is going to the gas chamber. I don't know what that means. BW says, "When do we start bullying dude?" AK says, "We have a solid 30 people who could probably have them want to jump." I don't know what that means. BW says, "If they vote for us, why would they be gassed?" A good point. AK says, "When do we bring that side out?" Which is like, kind of one of the more ominous messages, I would say, to be honest, where, because they're talking about, when you say when do we bring that side out, you're literally saying, you know, we're gonna hide some of the more nefarious aspects of our moral character intentionally, and then try to calculate the best time to bring that to the forefront. Here, let me see here. Yeah. Then PG says, I'm going to create some of the greatest psychological torture methods known to man. It says, we only want true believers. In response to, if they vote for us, why would they be gassed? JM says, can we fix the showers? Gas chambers won't fit the aesthetic. AK says, I'm ready to watch people burn now, which is wild. JM says, we gotta pretend that we like them. Hey, come on in, take a nice shower, relax, boom, they're dead. That's crazy. And that's liked by PG and AD. JM said that, and that's liked by PG and AD. Let me see here. And so, yeah, so some of the article sort of recaps that. The exchange is part of a trove of Telegram chats obtained by Politico and spanning more than 7 months of messages among young Republican leaders in New York, Kansas, Arizona, and Vermont. So this is including people from all across the country, which I think does indicate, at least amongst, I'm presuming my generation, I'm 25, so my generation, there is a racism problem on the right, which, you know, sort of makes sense when we've seen sort of the prominence of Nick Fuentes, for example, Myron Gaines. This sort of indicates that maybe their support is not necessarily astroturfed, as some have speculated, or is botted, as some have speculated, but is actually reflective of their actual growing popularity, which is somewhat concerning. You know, we'll see how long, well, we'll just continue reading the article. I will say that this is somewhat concerning. I've heard other things that were included in this. We'll continue reading. But it's concerning that, you know, spanning, you know, Arizona, an Arizona Republican is like a Missouri Democrat. Like, if this is going on in Arizona, that's actually kind of like an alarm bell, I'd say. It says the chat offers an unfiltered look at how a new generation of GOP activists talk when they think no one is listening. It says Politico began making inquiries. One member of the group chat is no longer employed at their job, and another's job offer was rescinded. Prominent New York Republicans, including Representative Elise Stefanik and State Minority Leader Rob Ort, have denounced the chat. And festering resentments among young Republicans have now turned into public recriminations, including allegations of character assassination and extortion. So, one thing that's important to take note. Now, I want to laud Elise Stefanik and Rob Ort, but I also want to sort of push back against some other people who, there have been reprehensible things said on both sides, and I've seen people running actively for public office afraid to condemn bad statements from people in their political camps. And I kind of understand the impulse to do so. Part of it is, you know, the media has sort of trained people on both sides to be, you know, not only partisan, but also extremely defensive. So if anyone on your side is critiqued at all, then you have to instantly go defend them rather than being honest and saying, oh, what that person said or did was bad or whatever, which is why I think among content creators, I actually kind of stand out as being someone who was relatively on the right. I'd say I'm center right, but someone who's on the right who criticizes Republicans such as Donald Trump. Because, you know, with all the partisanship, people are just afraid to sort of condemn the, you know, bad things that are either espoused or supported by members of their own political party, which is why I want to give a little moment here to praise Elise Stefanik and Rob Ort for doing this. I mean, this is like the common sense thing to do. You hear about a bunch of racists saying racist things, and then you condemn those racists and the things that they said. that's just common sense. That's just common sense. I understand, some people who might be defending what they're saying are doing so just out of knee-jerk reactions, are doing so out of unthinking partisanship, not to defend what they're saying. But I do also want to caution people to saying, oh, they refuse to condemn what was said, that means they must support it. No, that's not true. That's not true either, because I was literally watching a debate someone recently where someone was literally squirming, refusing to condemn abhorrent statements made by someone of their political party. And I'm like, I know this person doesn't actually support what's being said, but is just like afraid of seeming like you're turning against your own political party, which is unfortunate. And, I wish that American politics didn't move that way, but this is where we're at, unfortunately. A liberating atmosphere. The 2,900 pages of chats shared among a dozen millennial and Gen Z Republicans between early January and mid-August chronicle their campaign to seize control of the National Young Republican Organization on a hardline pro-Donald Trump platform. Many of the chat members already work inside government or party politics, and one serves as a state senator. Oh, hold on. You know what? I'm actually just realizing I might have been completely wrong about this, because I want to know if these are groypers. Actually, I really want to know if these people are groypers. I quite recently put out a video where I reacted to who was it that did this profile? I forget. Was it Wired? This. Okay, so hold on. I made this video where I reacted to a Wired article. Now, let me see here. If I look up, not governments, control. Okay. So I think this, I think this is the relevant section here. No impact on his popularity, but the 27-year-old is clear that what he refers to as the grug level supporters are not what is needed in order for his movement to take control. Instead, Fuentes speaks about attracting elite human capital, supporters who will then become part of an officer class of high intelligent entrepreneurial people. Supposed to get 1,000, 5,000 of these guys. Those are going to be the party officials, party apparatchiks in, as an analogy. Fuentes said, I'm kind of interested in inspiring those people, indoctrinating those people. They watch a show, they get the ideas, they get the inspiration, they kind of take a project into their own hands. I mean, you know what? I was criticizing this at the beginning, but this is actually good journalism, right? It sort of just breaks down who Nick Fuentes does, honestly and fairly, and who Nick Fuentes is. Explains how he wants to transform the country. I don't think that he'll be successful, but I'm glad that they're sort of exposing this, because I think, especially considering how popular he's getting, I think it's only fair for his methods and motives to be exposed. And I think that an article like this is probably one of the best ways to get that job done. So what I said there, which I think is probably incorrect now that I think about it, was that I don't think that the strategy is going to be successful. This, I think, proves that the strategy is actually working. Now, this is assuming that these people are groypers, which I don't think is extremely far-fetched. I think it's very likely that these are groypers. This might be Nick Fuentes' project in action. And I think if this is the case, I think if I'm part of the Republican Party, like the Republican Party proper, as in part of leadership, the individuals who sort of like vet out who's going to be allowed in the party, who's not, who are we going to back and who are we not going to back. I would actually be a little bit more scrupulous in looking for things like anti-Semitic dog whistles, racist dog whistles, the sorts of things that sort of would be like, okay, maybe this person's a groyper, maybe this person's defending Nick Fuentes, maybe this person's racist. Things like extreme anti-Zionism, lots of talk about, Jews controlling various aspects of society. Those are sort of like alarm bells that should be ringing in members of GOP leadership to be like, okay, hold on. Maybe our party is getting controlled by radicals. Because let's be honest, right? Let's be honest. It's not unthinkable that the Republican Party could get controlled by an extreme activist wing. This is what has sort of happened to the Democrat Party. If it happened to the Democrat Party, why couldn't it happen to the Republican Party? Seemingly, it's what's happening to the Republican Party before our very eyes, as Politico is actually exposing here. But it says here, many of the chat members already work inside government or party politics, and one serves as a state senator. That's crazy. Together, the messages reveal a culture where racist, anti-Semitic, and violent rhetoric circulate freely, and where the Trump-era loosening of political norms has made such talk feel less taboo among those positioning themselves as the party's leaders. The more the political atmosphere is open and liberating, like it has been with the emergence of Trump and a more right-wing GOP even before him, it opens up young people and older people to telling racist jokes, making racist commentaries in private and public, said Joe Fegan, a Texas A&M sociology professor who has studied racism for the past 60 years. I will say this, that I think there's a big difference between telling racist jokes in pursuit of comedy versus making racist commentaries in private and public. Like you can tell racist jokes all the live long day and not actually be racist. I think the problem with the real problem with racist jokes is that in reality is that they give cover for actual racist, because you can have someone really funny who's telling racist jokes and then turns out that person's actually serious. I think that Sam Hyde is a really good example of this. I think one could argue that folks like maybe Milo Yiannopoulos are like that as well, where it's like, this person's telling jokes, is hilarious. Turns out the person wasn't joking the whole time. So that's the real problem. But I'm not going to get all super up in arms against people who are trying to be funny. I, myself like being funny. I appreciate some good comedy here and there. I wish it was more common than it is in the American consciousness at the moment. But, I think that it's a good point to mention, this, provides cover for racists, because this is a real phenomenon. I think people can be a little too uptight, but I think that, the tightness isn't entirely unwarranted, especially in the day and age that we live in today. Let's see. He's also concerned the words could be applied to public policy. It's chilling, of course, because they will act on these views. Yes, that's the thing. Because they're actually saying, when are we going to allow our racist side to come out, basically. And they're talking about, even if they're using euphemisms for the whole gas chambers thing, you're talking about exterminating people who aren't entirely loyal to you, which is, I understand from a political perspective why this is done. This is actually something that is done quite commonly. Donald Trump is not the only person who has done this, where it's like, oh, you weren't loyal to me, I'll kick you out. Because you don't want people who are going to turn on you. But at the same time, you do need people who are willing to provide pushback to you. Otherwise, you have an echo chamber that does not provide the best advice. We've seen a lot of dictators do this just historically. The dynamic of easy racism and casual cruelty played out in often dark, vivid fashion inside the chats, where campaign talk and party gossip blurred into streams of slurs and violent fantasies. The group chat members spoke freely about the pressure to cow to Trump to avoid being called a rhino, the love of Nazis within their party's right wing, and their president's alleged work to suppress documents related to wealthy financier Jeffrey Epstein's child sex crime. See? And so stuff like this is like a big dog whistle too. It's like if you're on the right and you care like a whole lot about the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, a lot of that's born out of like the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. So like, for example, I think Nick Fuentes is a huge, release the Epstein's file guy, which I also am a big release the Epstein file guy, but when you focus on it so much, it's like, why do you want the Epstein files released? Like, I want the Epstein files released because I want abusers and assaulters to be exposed. Some other people want it to be released because, you know, some of the alleged people that they're claiming were involved were Jewish. Those are two very different things, but it can be hard to tell the difference sometimes, especially when very clearly these people are actively kind of like masking their true intents and their true ideology. But yeah, we've got more stuff here. It says Trump's too busy burning the Epstein files. Alex Dwyer, the chair of the Kansas Young Republicans, wrote in one instance. Dwyer and K. Katie. Oh, I thought it was written like that because whatever they used to copy and paste didn't include hyphens. But yeah, I guess that's the real last name. Dwyer and K. Katie declined to comment. Maligno and Hendricks did not return requests for comment, but some involved in the chat did respond publicly. Giunta claimed the release of the chat as part of a highly coordinated year-long character assassination led by Gavin Wax and the New York City Young Republican Club, in allusion to a once obscured internecine war that has now spilled into the open. So it doesn't sound like he said that they're wrong. Like, he's not saying that they're not real. He's saying it's part of a character assassination attempt. I think if you are saying these things, you know, you're assassinating your own character, right? You can't blame Gavin Wax or the New York City Young Republican Club for the racist things that you have said, you know? But I mean, you know, if we want to give props for honesty, at least he's not saying that the leaks are fake, right? These logs were sourced by way of extortion and provided to Politico by the very same people conspiring against me, he said. What's more disheartening is that despite my unwavering support of President Trump since 2016, rogue members of his administration, including Gavin Wax, have participated in this conspiracy to ruin me publicly simply because I challenged them privately. I don't really care why it was leaked. Of course, if you broke the law to get these leaks, you know, of course you should go to jail. But I don't care what the motivations were. We have the information now. So I don't really care about helping Gavin Wax, but you know, we're reading the chats and they're racist. You know, that's all there is to this. At least to the majority of people, you know. If you're so mad about Gavin Wax going after you, maybe you should have either been a little bit less racist or maybe not put them in a Telegram chat. Telegram chats get hacked all the time, by the way. I don't understand the right's infatuation with Telegram. I hear that the right uses Telegram. I hear that OSINT uses Telegram as well. But it's like, bro, Telegram, at least use Signal or something. But Telegram to me, it's like a something that scammers use. You know, they'll ask you to send them Bitcoin. Like if you want to have like actual secure conversations with people. Also, is it like Telegram? Didn't they help like international governments like backdoor into messages of people that they didn't like or something? So it's like Telegram's a honeypot, in my opinion. No conservative or Republican should be using it anyways. You know. If you're not familiar with honeypots are like, you know, they're sort of traps. They're like, oh, hey guys, come use this thing. And then once the users are using it, then people, you know, will use that access to the user data or the users themselves for nefarious purposes or whatever. Like, if you told me that the people running Telegram are literally like, ooh, we'll get these people to think that their messages are secure, and then, you know, they'll actually be vulnerable and people can dig into them and hack them or whatever and grab whatever messages they like, I would believe you if you told me that. I would. You mean you'd have to give me some proof, but it's an entirely believable story to me. Yeah, but let's continue reading the article here. Wax, a staffer in Trump's State Department, formerly led the New York Young Republican Club, a separate city-based group that is at odds with the state organization, the New York State Young Republicans. He declined to comment. So, I guess that's a good sign, if you want to know who's got the upper hand here. Very clearly, the guy who was in Trump's State Department, who is opposing the anti-Semite, he's got the upper hand, right? Everyone who's on Trump's side sort of is on the side of power on the right. So, that's a good sign. But I think the problem is this sort of exposes that it's the next generation or the next crop of people entering the Republican Party that is quite problematic. Despite his allusions to infighting, Giunta still apologized. I am so sorry to those offended by the insensitive and inexcusable language found within the more than 28,000 messages of a private group chat that I created during my campaign to lead the Young Republicans, he said. So this was part of his campaign. Interesting. So I wonder if this is just a group of him and his friends and his political connections, and they're coordinating ways to work on his campaign rather than like a whole bunch of people from all across the country sort of just like keeping tabs with one another and staying up to date. Because when let's see, how should I put this? Oh yeah. Because when you're running, even for a state or local position, you are going to want to try and pull, assets and connections from outside of the state, right? So, for example, people running for governor are going to ask Donald Trump for his endorsement, for example, right? So that might have been what was going on here. Now, I don't know if these people represent the majority of the Republican Party. I think it's concerning, especially you were able to get people from so many different states to band together and be so racist, in this little circle. But I don't know. I'll continue reading the article. While I take complete responsibility, I have no way of verifying their accuracy, and I'm deeply concerned that the message logs and questions may have been deceptively doctored. Okay. I think that's somewhat reasonable rather than saying that they're just fake. Right. Let's see here. At least one person in the Telegram chat works in the Trump administration. Michael Bartels, who according to his LinkedIn account serves as a senior advisor in the Office of General Counsel within the U.S. Small Business Administration. Bartels did not have much to say in the chat, but he didn't offer any pushback against the offensive rhetoric in it either. He declined to comment. I think this is actually a rather important paragraph. So someone in the Trump administration was in the chat, didn't say anything racist, and didn't provide any pushback to the people sending messages in the chat. It's pretty common to be added to group chats and then very rarely, if ever, check them. This happens to me. All my people who know me in real life know that I'm pretty bad at responding to my messages. It's just how I am. Not great. I'm not condoning it. If you get a text, respond to it. But I'm just saying that, this is just me personally. I am not great at responding to the messages that I receive. And I'm in, group chats that like I will not check for days, and then I'll go back and I'll respond and react to everything. So if that's me, and I'm in, all told between group texts, Discord servers, and group me's, like maybe around somewhere between like a dozen and 2 dozen group chats. Imagine being an elected official or someone who is part of, who's in a political position, who is getting added to all these chats constantly. Do I think that someone who is in the Trump administration, who works in the Small Business Administration, is going to be paying close attention to what some New York Republicans are talking about in a campaign level fueled chat? No, I'm not going to care about some local election. I'm going to be focused on the Small Business Administration. So to him, I would imagine, actually, reading between the lines, if he knew everything that was being said, that he probably would have either joined in if he was actually racist, or he would have pushed back and left if he opposed the racism that was being espoused in the group chat. A notarized affidavit signed by Bartels and obtained by Politico also sheds light on the inter-party rivalry that led the Restorer War Room Telegram chat to be made public. Bartles references Wax as well. He wrote that he did not give Politico the chat and that Wax demanded in a phone call that he provided the full chat log. When I attempted to resist that demand after providing some of the requested information, Wax threatened my professional standing and raised the possibility of potential legal action related to an alleged breach of a non-disclosure agreement. Bartels claimed in the affidavit, my position within the New York Republican Club was directly threatened. Walker now leads the New York State Young Republicans, touched on a similar theme, saying that he believes portions of the chat, quote, may have been altered, taken out of context, or otherwise manipulated, end quote, and that the private exchanges were obtained and released in a way that clearly intended to inflict harm. He also apologized. There's no excuse for the language and tone in the messages attributed to me. The language is wrong and hurtful, and I sincerely apologize. Very strange that he's dancing around admitting that he actually said the messages. He said, in messages attributed to me, but he also apologizes. If you didn't say what was said in there, then why are you apologizing? Kind of strange choice of words there. This has been a painful lesson about judgment and trust, and I am committed to moving forward with greater care, respect, and accountability in everything I say and do. 251 times. Mixed into formal conversations about whipping votes, social media strategy, and logistics, the members of the chat slung around an array of slurs, which Politico is republishing to show how they spoke. Epithets like the F slur, the R slur, and the N word appeared more than 251 times combined. In one instance, Walker, now I will say this, they said there were like 28,000, 23,000 messages. I was expecting a number larger than 251. 251 is still a lot of times to use slurs, but I was expecting a little bit more. In one instance, Walker, who at the time was a staffer for Ort, talked about how a mutual friend of some in the chat, quote, dated this very obese Indian woman for a period of time. Giyunta responded that the woman was not Indian. She just didn't bathe often. Samuel Douglas, a state senator from Northern Vermont and the head of the state's Young Republicans, replied to Giyunta. Okay. In a separate conversation, Giyunta shared that his flight to Charleston, South Carolina, landed safely. Then he offered some advice for his fellow Young Republicans. If your pilot is a she and she looks 10 shades darker than someone from Sicily, just end it there. Scream the no-no word, Giyunta wrote. Well, what's the no-no word? And I don't know what that is. Douglas did not respond to requests for comment. In a statement, Ort called for members of the chat to resign. I was shocked and disgusted to learn about the racist, anti-Semitic, and misogynistic comments attributed to the members of the New York State Republicans, Ort said. This behavior is indefensible and has no place in our party or anywhere in public life. Walker had been in line to manage Republican Peter Oberacker's campaign for Congress in upstate New York, but a spokesperson for the campaign said Walker won't be brought on in light of the comments in the chat. Okay, good. Like, I think if these people, now I don't know the full nature of these messages, and I don't know if they've been leaked in their entirety. It is possible that, the context of them has been stripped away or whatever. Some people have claimed, they were just joking. If that's true, if you were to release all the whole transcript, then what you would probably see is at some point people in the chat opposing racism when they're being serious and not joking. I don't know, but I think that what they're saying doesn't seem to be framed in a comedic enough way for me to assume that they're joking here. Just saying. But it's good. Like, if these people in the chat who were being anti-Semitic and racist and whatever, not the bystanders like that one SBA dude, but the actual racist people in the chat were blacklisted from the Republican Party, I think that it would be a boon to the party as a whole. And do a really good job of cleaning up the GOP. Now, it could incentivize groypers to just hide their affinity for anti-Semitism, which I think is natural. But I think it also might scare some anti-Semites away. They might be like, oh, well, it's not worth it to, try to control or take over the Republican Party when this is what's inevitably going to happen to us. Hopefully that's the result of this. Or maybe they even form their own party. Form their own party. That would actually be the best case scenario, because then we could just ignore them. Let them collect their 0 electoral college votes every election. It's true. Let's see. Seeking Trump's endorsement. The private rhetoric isn't happening in a vacuum. It comes amid a widespread coarsening of the broader political discourse as incendiary and racially offensive tropes from the right become increasingly common in public debate. Last month, Trump posted, and oh my goodness, they're actually going to try to connect sombrero memes to this. Trump posts vulgar deepfake slam. Republican Democratic leaders, vulgar AI generated video. Okay, what's vulgar about this?
Look, guys.
And this is why I slightly doubt, the article to an extent. Like, for example, I'm like, I don't 100% know if they're being accurate in their framing of the messages because we don't see the full transcript. But like, let's see what's so vulgar about this.
Look, guys, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore. We have no voters left because of all of our woke trans bullshit. Not even black people want to vote for us anymore. Even Latinos hate us. So we need new voters. And if we give all these illegal aliens free health care, we might be able to get them on our side so they can vote for us. They can't even speak English, so they won't realize we're just a bunch of woke pieces of shit, at least for a while, until they learn English and they realize they hate us too.
See, there's nothing vulgar about that. I have my own thoughts about Donald Trump posting things like this on his social media account. He really shouldn't be doing this, but there's nothing about this that's vulgar. So it's some goofy boomer humor, right? Yeah. So when we do have to remember that this is coming from the same publication that framed a meme in that light. Let's see here. Last month, Trump posted an artificial intelligence generated video that showed House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries as sombrero beside Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, whose fabricated remarks were about trading free healthcare for immigrant votes. A false long-running GOP trope. Sombrero meme has been widely used to mock Democrats as the government shutdown wears on. In his 2024 campaign, Trump spread false reports of Haitian migrants eating pets, and at one of his rallies welcomed comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage and joked about black people carving watermelons on Halloween. I think, and see, this is annoying. This is why exclusives do not belong to publications like Politico. Because at some point they're going to inject, in most cases, they're going to inject their own ideology and their own political motivations into this. So for example, you've got like a relatively well-written article here. For all intents and purposes, this is where the article ends. Here, they're trying desperately to connect Donald Trump to this stuff. Now, I will say there's stuff going on right now that I think has sort of led to the messages that we've seen in this chat. But that stuff is not coming from Donald Trump himself. That stuff is coming from Elon Musk taking over X and then sort of removing a lot of the restrictions that they had against racism and stuff, which has allowed a lot of racist stuff to be posted on X that ordinarily wouldn't have been allowed. And so that's made people more comfortable with using more slurs, as well as being more racist and extreme towards the right. I'm not going to pretend that, Twitter wasn't a cesspool of far left content, but now X is becoming a cesspool of far right content. And so when you look at a platform that has been mainstreamed by the left, such as X, back when it was Twitter, and they see a bunch of racist people posting racist things on there, it makes, especially like when it gets a lot of engagement, it makes people observing that think, oh, this must be popular, this must be cool, I can join up in this, and this is not, it's not, serious to engage in this type of hateful racist rhetoric. which is, not true. It is extremely controversial, and you shouldn't engage in racist rhetoric like that. But I think that's the real reason why we're seeing group chats like this, is because of the mainstreaming of extreme racist rhetoric, which Donald Trump does not espouse. Let's see here. Liz Houston, a White House spokesperson, rejected the idea that Trump's rhetoric had anything to do with the chat members' language. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Exactly, yes. Yeah, she's completely right. It says only an activist left-wing reporter would desperately try to tie President Trump into a story about a random group chat he has no affiliation with. Exactly, yes. While failing to mention the dangerous smears coming from Democratic politicians who have fantasized about murdering their opponent and called Republicans Nazis and fascists, she said. No one has been subjected to more vicious rhetoric and violence than President Trump and his supporters. Well, I'll say this. If you were going to, let's say there was a group chat of a bunch of racist black progressive Democrats, right? Which I'm sure such group chats exist, by the way. I don't think that you could look at, the majority of leaders of the Democratic Party and say, look, these people are inciting racial hatred. Like, there are progressives who are inciting racial hatred for sure, and the media has mainstreamed some of them. But you're not going to see Nancy Pelosi going out in public saying, "Yeah, whiteness is a disease." You're not going to see people like that going out and doing it. You're not even going to see Hakeem Jeffries doing that, right? Or Chuck Schumer or other Democratic leaders. So, on both sides, when it comes to the top down, there's no top down racist political messaging. I would say, at least from what I could tell. Now there's endorsements of some racist policies, right, like DEI, for example, but you're not seeing sort of wholesale endorsement of the type of extreme language that you see in these chats. This is sort of like bottom up stuff from extreme members of the political party. See, in the Restore War Room chat, Giunta tells his fellow Republicans that he spoke with the White House about an endorsement from Trump for his bid to become chairman of the National Federation. Trump and the Republican National Committee ultimately decided to stay neutral in the race. Wow. So I wonder how this affects, any conclusion one might draw as to how racist Donald Trump is. The racist went up to Donald Trump and said, "Hey, can you endorse me?" And he said, "Nah." Wow, what a racist Donald Trump must be if he's refusing to endorse the racist Republican. Let me see. A White House official said that he has no affiliation with the Restore YR chat, and that hundreds of groups asked the White House for its endorsement. Giunta was the most prominent voice in the chat, spreading racist messages, often encouraged or liked by other members. When Luke Mosselman, the chair of the Arizona Young Republicans, asked if the New Yorkers in the chat were watching an NBA playoff game, Giunta responded, "If I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch a monkey play ball." Giunta elsewhere refers to black people as the watermelon people. I see this on Instagram all the time. I'm actually surprised the amount of racism that Instagram allows in their platform. And I do report it when I see it. Very rarely does it get taken down. I actually just got a response from Instagram saying, "Hey, and there was literally an account that had like 88 in the display name, or in the account handle. It had 2 lightning bolts, which is one of the symbols of hate, in the description as well. I think the bio said racism is cool or racism is funny or something. I reported the account, and the account said, "Hey, we didn't find anything wrong with this account. Didn't seem like it was racist or anything." I'm like, oh, bruh. And decisions like that are also kind of like leading to people being more comfortable with being racist online. Hendricks made a similar remark in July. Bro was at a chicken restaurant ordering his food. Would he like some watermelon Kool-Aid with that? I've actually been like, why don't they sell any watermelon related products at Popeyes? But there's a difference between joking and being serious, to be fair. I mean, hey, have you ever seen anyone say I don't like watermelon? I'm just saying. There's a nice business opportunity there. Hendricks was a communications assistant for Kansas's Republican Attorney General Chris Kobach until Thursday. He also said in the chat that despite political differences, he's drawn to Missouri's young Republican organization because Missouri doesn't like F slurs. Interesting. Politico reached out to Denedry Herberts, a spokesperson for the Attorney General, who also serves as the Kansas GOP chair, and shared with her excerpts of the chat involving Hendricks. In response, Herbert said, quote, "We are aware of the issues raised in your article and that Hendricks is no longer employed in Kobach's office." In another exchange, Dwyer, the Kansas chair, informs Giunta that one of Michigan's young Republicans promised him the group will vote for the most right-wing person to lead the national organization. Great. I love Hitler, Giunta responded. Giunta really seems like a problem. Dwyer reacted with a smiley face. Who was Giunta? That's William Hendricks. Few minority groups spared. Giunta, who serves as chief of staff to New York State Assembly member Mike Riley, ultimately fell 6 points short of winning the chairship to lead the Young Republican National Federation earlier this year, despite earning endorsements from Stefanik and longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone. Riley did not respond to requests for comment. Earlier this year, Stefanik accepted an award from the New York State Young Republicans. She lauded Giunta for his tremendous leadership in August and had her campaign and the political PAC she leads donate to that state organization. Alex DeGrassi, a senior advisor for Stefanik, said the Congresswoman was absolutely appalled to learn about the alleged comments made by leaders of the New York State Republicans and other state YRs in a large national group chat. See, one thing it's hard to tell because I don't know these people and I don't know what their public profile is and how they move and behave in public. I don't know if when engaging with Lee Stefanik, they were making all of these, abhorrent statements. Like, I don't know if they were like, oh, hey, let's cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks or not. Because it's very possible that they hid it from her because they knew that someone like Elise Stefanik was not on the type of time that they were on. Tone policing, right? Or code switching or whatever. It's very possible that they did that. According to the description provided by Politico, the comments were heinous, anti-Semitic, racist, and unacceptable. He continued, noting Stefanik was has never employed anyone in the chat. Well, she praised someone in the chat, But, sure. If the description by Politico is accurate, Congresswoman Stefanik calls for any NY young Republicans responsible for these horrific comments in this chat to step down immediately. Stone also condemned the comments in a statement. I, of course, have never seen this alleged chat room thread, he said. If it is authentic, I would, of course, denounce any such comments in the strongest possible terms. This would surprise me as it is inconsistent with Peter with the Peter that I know, although I only know him in his capacity as the head of the New York Young Republicans, where I thought he did a good job. Few minority groups are spared from the Young Republican group's chat. Their rhetoric, normalized at most points as dark humor, mirrors some popular conservative commentators, podcasters, and comedians amid a national erosion of what's considered acceptable discourse. Giunta's line on a darker-skinned pilot, for example, echoes one used by slain conservative activist Charlie Kirk last year when he said, "I see a black pilot if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Kirk was discussing how diversity hiring invites unwholesome thinking. I think hopefully this is a clip to the actual statement in context.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits, or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off, and I feel better now thinking about that.
No, I mean, like, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
So, to say, I hate how DEI has made me wonder whether or not women and POCs who are, chosen for various positions are qualified for the positions that they hold is not the same at all as, saying, just leave the plane if you see a black female pilot. like those are different things. Now, maybe there was nuance in the chat that Politico is just not sharing with us, but kind of a disingenuous twisting there. Very clear to see that Politico is attempting to take some of these extreme statements here from racist young Republicans, who, by the way, are, from all accounts in this article, even minorities and very unpopular within their own political circle. And trying to impute those on the rest of conservatives and conservatism. But hey, this is politics. I guess this is what you do. Politics has never been a game for the most honest people in the world, unfortunately. I try to engage with it, but it's a little bit irksome to see them trying to pull tricks like this, trying to deceive the American people into thinking that Republicans and the conservative movement is more extreme and racist than it actually is. Let's see, Walker, who also uses the moniker Eye Patch McCain, originally coined by conservative commentator Tucker Carlson, in apparent reference to GOP Representative Dan Crenshaw. Crenshaw lost his eye while serving in a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan. Walker also makes the remark, I prefer my war heroes not captured, a repeat from a similar 2015 line from Trump. Art Gibson, a professor at the University of Dayton who specializes in white racial extremism. Ooh, I didn't know that they hired people to be white racial extremists, but okay. Surmised the young Republicans in the chat were influenced by Trump's language, which he said is often hyperbolic and emotionally charged. Trump's persistent use of hostile, often inflammatory language that normalizes aggressive discourse in conservative circles can be extremely influential on young operatives who are still trying to figure out what is that political discourse, Gibson said. White supremacist symbols. Gibson reviewed multiple excerpts of the young Republicans chat provided by Politico. One was a late July message where Mosselman, the chair of the Arizona Young Republicans, mused about how the group could win support for their preferred candidate by linking an opponent to white supremacist groups. But Mosselman then realized the plan could backfire. Kansas's young Republicans could end up being attracted to that opponent. That's actually kind of funny. Can we get them to start releasing Nazi edits with her, like pro-Nazi and fascism propaganda? He asked the group. OMG, I love this plan, Rachel Hope, the Arizona Young Republicans events chair, responded. It was funny. I literally was asking my mom like a few weeks ago. I was like, hey, hold on. How come when someone is like, when you're in a political arena, you're in a campaign against someone else, why don't they like do stuff to make it seem like they're like racist or whatever? Like, for example, like the example I said was like, why don't they, if you, let's say that I am a Republican or yeah, let's say I'm a black dude running for Congress or whatever. Why don't I go to like my opponent, who's like a white Democrat? Why don't I make like this ad that is attacking me using a bunch of like racial epithets and saying like, oh, he's not American because he's black or whatever, and then just release that to make my opponent look bad? Because if you see an ad that's smearing me, you're going to assume that it's coming from him. But of course, you know, like people would do deep dives and figure out that I was the one who created the ad, and that would backfire. But I was just like, so I guess I'm not the only one who's, you know, thought of this concept before, where it's like, you know, you use extreme rhetoric to tie it to your opponent so that you yourself look good. My only problem is we will lose the Kansas delegation, Musselman said. Hope in the two Kansas Young Republicans in the chat reacted with a laughing face to the message. Hope did not respond to requests for comment. Musselman declined to comment. Gibson said the Young Republicans' conversations reminded him of online discussions between members of neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups. You say once or twice is a joke, but you say 251 times is no longer a joke, Gibson said. The more we repeat certain ideas, the more real they become to us. Weeks later, some of the chat staying in a hotel asks its members to guess what room we're in. 1488. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. They probably did that on purpose. You know, Andy Dwyer, Dwyer responds. White supremacists use the number 1488 because 14 is the number of words in the white supremacist slogan. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. H is the 8th letter in the alphabet, and 88 is often used as shorthand for Heil Hitler. In another conversation in February, Giunta talks approvingly about the Orange County Teenage Republican Organization in New York, which appears to be part of the network of national teenage Republicans, and how he was pleased with its young members' ideological bent. They support slavery and all that stuff, mega-based, he said. The term based in interculture is used to express approval with an idea, often one that's bold or controversial. Yes, I think we're all familiar with that. In a statement, Orange County GOP Chair Courtney Canfield Green said the party was disappointed to learn its teen group was mentioned in the chat. Our teen volunteers have no affiliation with the NYSYRs or the YRNF. Man, y'all gotta do better with these acronyms, because this is a mouthful. She said, this behavior has no home within the Republican Party in Orange County. Ed Cox, the chair of the New York State GOP, also condemned the remarks made in the chat. I was shocked and disgusted to learn about the reports of comments made by a small group of young Republicans, he said. Just as we call out vile racist and anti-Semitic rhetoric on the far left, we must not tolerate it within our own ranks. Members of the Telegram chat speak about their personal lives too. Extensive discussions about their everyday lives include one exchange about how devoutly Catholic some chat members are and how often they attend church. Many of the slurs, epithets, and violent language and used in the chat often appear to be intended as jokes. So, I mean, at least they're being a little bit honest there, but I will say some of the things that have already been shared in this article didn't really seem like they were intended to be jokes. Mosman was derided by members of the chat as a couple of racial slurs. Stay in the closet, Epsler Walker of New York also jested in July, although he is the group's main target of the same epithet. The group used slurs against Asians too. My people built the train tracks with the Chinese, Walker says at one point, referring to his Italian ancestors. I mean, that's just a reference to America's rich, diverse heritage, to be fair. Let his people go, Maligno responds, keep the C slur, though. Not the saltine one, by the way. In another instance, Musselman tells the group that the Spanish came to America to get with every single woman. And the Dwyer writes, sex is gay. Okay, now I know for sure these people are groypers. Now I know for sure that these people are groypers, because you guys remember this clip. It's one of my favorite clips from the internet because of how stupid it is.
what, people calling me gay because I've never had a girlfriend. I think if anything, it makes me less gay. If anything, it makes me not gay. As opposed to less gay. Not that there's any gay, but it makes me not gay. Well, because think about it this way. You know, a gay people do date girls all the time. Real. And when I said on Elijah Schaefer's show, and they said, have you ever been in a romantic relationship? Have you ever had sex with a girl? And I said, no. If you name searched me on Twitter, as I always do, all these gay people are coming out and saying, I've had more girlfriends than Nick. I've had sex with more girls than Nick. So like I said last week, not only is that thinking flawed, but actually it's the reverse. That actually makes me really more heterosexual than anybody. If we're really being honest,
It's blows my mind how stupid this
never
is.
having a girlfriend, never having sex with a woman, really makes you more heterosexual. Because honestly, dating women is gay. Having sex with women is gay. And having sex with men is gay. And you know, it's all gay. And if you want to know the truth, the only really straight heterosexual position is to be an asexual incel. That's it. So that's all there is.
I think he's trying to make himself seem cooler in his mind. He's gaslighting himself. But anyways, I think that these people just might be groypers, you know? Anyways, let's continue. It was assault. Musselman replies, epic, Walker says. It's crazy. There's more explicit malice in some phrases too, especially when they turn their ire on opponents outside the chat, such as leader of the rival Grow YR slate, Hayden Paget, who defeated Giunta and was reelected chairman of the Young Republican National Federation this summer. You mean Hayden Efsler wrote the resolution himself? Giunta asked the group about the National Young Republicans chair in late May. Assault Hayden, Mosselman declared the following month. Adolf Paget is the Efsler bunker as we speak. I don't know what that means. Maybe this is proof I'm not fall right, but I don't even know what that means. Paget responded to the chat's language in a statement. The Young Republican National Federation condemns all forms of racism, anti-Semitic, and hate, Paget said. I want to be clear that such behavior is entirely inconsistent with our values. It has no place within our organization or the broader conservative movement. Giunta also had expletive-laden criticism for the Young Republicans in states that were supporting or leaning toward Paget's faction. Minnesota, Efsler's message continuing. Arkansas, I'm not even going to read this. This is all just like ridiculous. If you're watching this, you can read it. If you're listening to this, hit pause and come back to it later if you want to see some racist stuff. Giunta also said he planned to make one of the competing Young Republicans rage quit on the convention floor. I mean, a lot of this actually seems like bitterness. A lot of this seems like bitter, angry lashings out at the normal conservatives for beating them. If I'm being honest, we're seeing a lot of vengeful language targeted not at the left but at the right. So it's like these are probably just bitter losers who are just commiserating in a Telegram group chat. It actually makes me think, maybe these people are not particularly, popular. For example, like there are probably a whole lot of people in this group chat, but only one or two of them was elected to anything important. It seems to me like this is actually just pretty pathetic. It would be one thing if this group chat was involving people who won a bunch of elections at the state level or whatever and was able to become parts of various Republican administrations across the country. You know, of course, you had people from the outside in who were already members of certain, they were already holding certain political positions. But I don't think that those people were holding positions, most of them even said anything in the chat. So again, it could be a thing where they were added, they didn't say anything, or they didn't read the messages. For the people who were engaged very heavily in those messages, it didn't seem like they were really elected to anything that important. So, or they were losing and just being bitter about it. So this actually is more like pathetic than it is threatening, I think, to normal people on the right. Let's see. Another instance, Douglas, the Vermont state senator, describes to the group members how one of Padgett's Jewish colleagues may have made a procedural error related to the number of Maryland delegates permitted at the National Convention. I was about to say you're giving nationals too much credit and expecting, it's another racist thing. I'm not going to read that. While reporting this article, Politico was examining a separate allegation that Giunta and the Young Republicans mismanaged the New York organization's finances and hadn't paid at least one venue for a swanky holiday party it hosted last year. Politico's report detailed how the organization was missing required financial disclosure forms and how the subsequent efforts to file the forms revealed the organization was in more than $28,000 of debt. As of Tuesday, updated records show the organization is more than $38,000 of debt. This is the group that Roger Stone said was being run well. See, Roger Stone, this is one of the reasons why I do not trust Roger Stone's judgment. Generally, if he is co-signing people, I run away from that person, whoever that person might be. Once you've cozied up to Alex Jones so much, I feel like that's a check engine light. Just like, watch out. I think something might be amiss here. Donations to New York State Republicans' political account must be reported to the State Board of Elections. Expenditures must be reported too. At the time, Giunta told Politico the allegations were nothing more than a sad and pathetic attempt at a political hit job. But in their Restore Your War Room chat, he and Walker speak flippantly about mishandling the club's finances. NYSYR account be like 500 balding cream, 1,000 it was Ozempic. Well, clearly that's not working. Walker said in one message, NYSYR will be clearing bankruptcy after this. I just know it, he said in another. I drained $10K tonight to pay for my next vacation to Italy. Giunta appeared to joke about the organization's bank account. That's poorly written. But I mean, you wrote a lot of words in here, so. But I guess it's someone's job to proofread all this stuff. I don't know. I spent it on a massage, he says, of another check that was deposited in the account. Great. Can't wait to get sued by our venue, Walker replies. I mean, I'm sure he was very happy about that. Members of the chat occasionally appeared to be aware of its toxicity and even made remarks that considered the possibility someone outside their tight-knit group could see it. Walker seemed to consider that possibility the most. In one instance, he joked about bombing the Young Republican National Federation's convention in Nashville and then remarked, just kidding for our assigned FBI tracker. When you add for our FBI assigned tracker, it actually makes it seem like you weren't joking. It seems like that's the joke. In another, he considered the totality of the thousands of messages he and his peers had written and what would happen if the public saw them come to light. If we ever had a leak of this chat, we would be cooked for real. Now, we've gone through this whole article. It took us quite a while, but I think it's worth it. I think the one thing to point out is we don't know, the full contents of the chat or the context. If they were joking, it's very possible that somewhere else in the group chat they sort of condemned racism, condemned sexism, and those types of things. But to me, the way that people are very cagey about this, and also the way that members in the group chat haven't leaked messages of them condemning racism in the chat, for example, or saying, oh yeah, we were joking, makes it seem like Politico is probably framing the messages made in the chats accurately. So I'm really happy to see a lot of Republicans actually speaking out and condemning this, because it's very important that the right condemns this. It's most important for people in a various political camp to condemn the people on their side when they do bad things. I'm a Republican, which is why I think it's important for me to condemn Donald Trump when he does bad things, right? Democrats need to condemn their extremists. Yes, I may punch across the aisle, not literally, figuratively. I might go across the aisle and be like, okay, this person is extreme, this person is bad. But at the same time, it's more powerful if a Democrat says something like that, first of all. And second of all, people on the right have our own issues. So we should be focusing on cleaning up our own act as well so that we can move forward and actually help and enhance and improve the country, as we continue conservative activism.